I can tell you right now that the superintendent from Franklin Regional has just arrived on the scene. You see him walking right down there, along the line of buses. His name is Gennaro Pirano. He is the superintendent of Franklin Regional. He's going to be giving us a news conference here shortly to tell us exactly what happened. And I realize that a number of our viewers might be tuning into the story for the first time, so we want to recap what happened here. There was apparently a sophomore, a 16-year-old student here at Franklin Regional High School who came to school armed with 2 knives and started stabbing students. There were 20 victims, 19 of them students, one of them an adult. This happened really early this morning. Around 7:15 is when the first 911 call came in, and it was actually a school resource officer, a security officer, who actually called 911. We know that there were several attempts to tackle this student, including that security officer who was injured, and we also know that ultimately it was the principal who took down that 16-year-old, but of course not before this student injured a number of students. Some of them are in critical condition. I was listening to a news conference from Forbes Hospital where we know at least 3 students there are in critical condition, and they were describing some of the wounds to these students, that the words were deep and penetrating wounds to the lower abdomen and the flank. Those students are now in surgery. They are expected to pull through, but they are still in critical condition. And all day long we've been hearing stories of, there was apparently another student who pulled the fire alarm, and by pulling the fire alarm, that alerted the other students on campus to immediately start running. I had a chance to talk to one of the students shortly after I arrived here on the scene, who was a senior here. He said that there have been a number of fights recently in the past year. We don't know exactly what the motive was in this particular case with this particular student, but he said he was in the cafeteria when this happened, and he walked me through what happened. The very first thing that alerted him that something was wrong is he started hearing screams of students and then kids running through the cafeteria, and then he heard the fire alarm. And he said when you put it all together, he knew that this was not just a drill, that there was something serious going on here. They then ushered most of the students out to a football field, and they now have, many of the students in fact are still here on campus. They're at the middle school. To lay it out for you, this is a middle school here. The high school is just up the road. They have moved the students now from the high school to the middle school. These buses are lined up because they're getting ready. As soon as the parents are able to sign them out, then the students will be allowed home. But they have a process here. They're not just letting the students go. They want to make sure that the students are actually released to the parents. Other schools in the area, the elementary schools, as understandably so, has been canceled. And this really has affected this community of Murraysville. This is a pretty small and it's a tight-knit community. And again, listening to that news conference at Forbes at the hospital, they were talking about many of these doctors were actually treating students that they know. And in some cases, we heard from a doctor who was an OBGYN who was assisting because it was an all hands on deck at the hospital when this emergency happened. He said some of those kids that were coming in, he'd actually delivered. So they know these families of the victims. So it affects them emotionally. You know, they do the clinical response, but at the same time, this is something that obviously is going to affect them for years to come. Another thing, a piece of this is, you know, a question that has come up was there metal detectors at the school? Well, the student I talked to, the senior, said there are no metal detectors because, again, this is a small community. It's not like something people believe that you have to have metal detectors in order to go to school. That might be something that they review as these days and weeks go on. But again, we're waiting for this news conference that should be happening any moment now. Gennaro Pirano, he's the Franklin Regional Superintendent. He came on the job December of 2012. We're also told that the principal that we're hearing ultimately tackled this particular student, the suspect, that he hasn't been on the job that long either. So there's going to be a lot more to the story as we get all of the details fleshed out, including a motive, including anything that might have led up to this. But this is a story, you know, our hearts and our prayers certainly go out to all of the victims. Now back to you.